discuss the things that they're doing. Why? Because people are making an impact. You know, life has given us a lot of impacts this year. And I always am, it refreshes me to know that there are still people that are resilient enough, regardless of all the things that we've been through, that are still saying, man, I've got to reach one more. I've got to talk to one more. I've got to impact one more. And I am blessed because every night, every other night, really, I get to have someone come into our studios virtually, and we find out about their mission, their passion, their drive, their impact. What are they doing? And so tonight I am blessed. I am very blessed to have a young lady that's doing a work that, man, it's the only one like it in the nation. Now, who would have thought? I mean, I just get so blessed to have these guests because because of the uniqueness of some of the things that folks are doing. And my guest, Lindsey Smith, is the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. And this is an organization and a commission that helps people who have been or can bring to the table proof that they have been wrongly incarcerated. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if I used to speak in prisons. I used to preach in prisons. So I would always appreciate being able to go in and the guard helping me out. There's nothing like being able to get your freedom. And imagine being in a place that restricts your movements and restricts your freedom when you're really not supposed to be there. And somebody who could be doing something totally different and be doing something, you know, maybe even more lucrative, has decided that she is going to give her heart and passion to helping people who have been wrongly incarcerated. So welcome to Impacting Life 24/7, Miss Lindsey Smith.
Thank you.
Yes, and you know, it's not like we're just getting to know one another, because you were here in the pre-show, and we're very, very thankful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, especially in our virtual studios. And both of us have competing Christmas trees going on, so I love it. So, Lindsey, tell us, for those, you know, people listen to us from all across the country and around the world, and so every other night they get to meet somebody new. So why don't, before we get started and unpacking what you do with the commission, why don't you just introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about Lindsey Smith?
All right. I am Lindsey Smith. I am the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission, and we are going to talk a lot about that tonight. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, work here in Raleigh. I'm from the mountains of North Carolina. Brevard is where I grew up, beautiful land of the waterfalls. I have a son. He is 8 years old. In 4 days, he will be 9. So we are talking tonight about where we want to, or what we want to have for our birthday dinner, what kind of cake we want to have, all of those things. And a wonderful husband of 13 years who is a huge supporter of me and my work as well.
Awesome. That's awesome. 9 years old. That's a great age. I wish I could go back to being 9 and not have any of the bills that I have.
That's right.
Just cake and ice cream and fun times with mom and dad. So, Lindsey, we thank you for again being with us. And Lindsey Smith is the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission, and that website you can find at innocencecommission-nc.gov. And listen, one of the things that really stood out to me when I saw your write-up for the show was that your commission is only one of its kind in the whole nation.
Yeah, that's correct. So we were created by the North Carolina General Assembly in 2006 and began operation in 2007. We are a neutral, independent state agency that's charged with investigating and evaluating post-conviction claims of innocence. And so we are the only of our kind in the nation. We were modeled after a similar conviction, a review commission in the UK, but there's nothing like us here. And so a lot of times in innocence work, what you see are nonprofits who represent convicted persons in their claims of actual innocence, or you may see a conviction integrity unit or a conviction review unit that is housed in a prosecutor's office. And so those are just different than the model that we have. Our model, like I said, is a state agency. We take claims from all over the state of North Carolina. We're independent and we are neutral.
And one of the things that I remember in our discussions on the pre-show is that when somebody has the need of your services and what your commission does, they can't. It's oftentimes, and we hear this a lot because, like I said, I've worked in a lot of prisons in ministry, and there's a lot of innocent folks in there that are claiming they're innocent, and they're really not. But for someone to get some support from you, they have to have some. You can't just say, "Well, I didn't do it." What do they have to bring to the table?
Sure. So the commission, because we're a state agency, we have a statute that kind of says exactly what we're looking for. First of all, they have to be convicted of a felony in North Carolina state court. So we're not looking at federal claims or claims out of the state or even our lower level misdemeanors here in North Carolina. They also have to have some new evidence of innocence that wasn't heard at a trial or wasn't reasonably available to them at a time if they pled guilty. And then that new evidence also has to be credible and verifiable evidence of innocence. So I always use the example, if your new evidence is, hey, I've got my mom and she's my alibi, that alone probably isn't so at that point, if that's what you bring to the table and there's some other avenues, we piece by piece, block by block, to see if there's other people maybe who alibi you, or is there some other substantial evidence out there like DNA testing or forensic testing that we can add to that alibi of your mom. Otherwise, that's probably not going to be sufficient for the commission's process.
Right. And that's important because listen, what you're doing is you're really saying, okay, someone has been incarcerated and we're going to, in a neutral capacity, we're going to look at the evidence and the facts and peel back all of the layers and see if what we present can go forward, because it just doesn't stop with you, does it?
That's correct. So our process, like I said, we're kind of our staff is the investigative body for the agency. And so we do these investigations. And if there is something new that's credible and verifiable, then we will present that to our commissioners. And those are 8 folks. They come from all over the criminal justice system and beyond. So we have a superior court judge, a prosecutor, defense attorney, sheriff, victim advocate, a public member, and then some discretionary members. And so when we present that case to them, they're actually deciding whether there's sufficient evidence of factual innocence to merit judicial review. And if they decide that, and that's not a finding of innocence, then the case goes back before 3 judges. That becomes adversarial. So up until that point, throughout our entire process, it was inquisitive. It wasn't adversarial. We were just trying to get to the truth, whatever that truth may be. In that adversarial process, then that convicted person is trying to prove by clear and convincing evidence that he or she is in fact innocent. And then at that point, if the 3 judges are unanimous and agree that the person is innocent, then they're exonerated. And so that is a true exoneration. That is a finding of innocence, that in fact, the person who's been convicted did not commit the crime.
Wow. And for those of you tuning in to Impacting Life 24/7, I'm joined by attorney. I have been negligent in making sure I give you the correct handle because I'm attorney and executive director, Lindsey Smith. She's the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. And Lindsey, you started out in your law career or your law journey. You were actually going a different route. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I went to law school, I only ever wanted to be a criminal prosecutor. That is literally the reason I went to law school. And so while I was there, I interned at, I think, 4 different district attorneys' offices throughout the state of North Carolina and was on the trajectory to be a prosecutor. I had a very wise professor who said to me, hey, before you leave law school, I want you to try something else. And so I remember, I don't want to date myself, but back then we didn't have an online directory of internships. We had a notebook, right, that you had to flip through.
Right.
And so I sat down in the floor and flipped through this notebook, and I found this thing called the Innocence Inquiry Commission. And I read about it, and it was like, it's neutral. And I thought, you know what, I can do that. And so I actually interned at the commission my third year of law school. And when I did that, I learned a lot in a very short period of time about our criminal justice system and how sometimes we get it wrong. And it really fueled my desire to go and be a prosecutor. I still wanted to do that. And I thought, we can really do some things on the front end to prevent wrongful convictions if we have good prosecutors who are willing to stop and ask questions and make sure we're getting things right.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out of law school, it was 2008, and everybody is pretty familiar with that time period. At least in North Carolina, jobs were hard to find. We had a hiring freeze for most state positions, and so getting a position even at a district attorney's office was difficult. So I was not able to do that. I kind of hung out for a year or so working with the law school in their career services office, looking for a job. I actually took a job as a family law attorney. And the day that I accepted that position, I ran into the former director of the Innocence Commission, who said, hey, by the way, we're applying for a grant, and if we get it, we'd love for you to apply for a job. And I thought, well, that's not going to work because I just accepted a job in family law. It took me not a couple of weeks to realize that family law was not going to be where I needed to be. Right. At all. And so they did get that grant, and I did apply, and I began working at the commission under the federal DNA grant, looking at cases where there was a DNA component in January of 2010. And I've been there since.
And we believe that you're going to be there for many, many more years, because this work is so important. For, again, those listening on our podcast, Impacting Life 24/7 with your host, CL King, I am privileged tonight to have Lindsey Smith. She is attorney Lindsey Smith, the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. And you can find them at innocencecommission-nc.gov, or you can find them on Facebook at NC Innocence. And one of the things that really stood out to me was how this kind of lined up with some things that I've been doing relative to our show. I reached out to a gentleman, and please forgive me because that's why I write folks' names down, because I can't remember. I got 7 children. I can't remember any of their names. So just forgive me, okay? But there was a gentleman that her and I were discussing off air that spent 40 years in prison in North Carolina and was found to be innocent and spent 40 years. I said, man, when this brother went in to prison, I've reached out to him and they actually have contacted us back. We're just kind of in the preliminary phases of working through having him on the show. But man, when he went in, cell phones were not a thing. I mean, like cordless phones in the house were barely a thing. And so I can't imagine being in a place knowing that you're innocent and everybody looking at you like, yeah, okay, we hear that all the time. Like I said, it's a common thing behind in the cell block. So when we have an organization like the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission, man, I want to magnify that, because there's more people like that gentleman that they are helping. So you, since 2010, if my memory serves me well, you have helped how many people?
We have had 12 individuals that have been exonerated since 2010 based on investigations conducted by the commission.
2010, totally exonerated. And these aren't folks. There's some folks on that you've helped that were in there for longer than just a few weeks, right?
Oh, yes. Most of our claimants have been incarcerated for a long time. Several of our exonerees were incarcerated for 30 plus years for crimes they didn't commit. I can remember in August of 2019, we had our most recent exoneration was Mr. James Blackman. And he was exonerated after 36 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And again, I'm going to date myself. I was 36 years old at the time of that exoneration. And it hit me very, very hard that we had incarcerated someone for something they didn't do for my entire life.
Wow.
The whole thing.
I can't imagine that myself, because you only get one life. You only get one shot at this thing. And sometimes circumstances or places or whatever, you just were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But man, to have somebody and have an organization that is committed to helping people who are or who have been wrongfully convicted and finding the facts, using facts, not just hyperbole or anecdotal evidence, using facts to prove folks' innocence is really what we need more of. And I told Lindsey that I want her to give our Leadership Institute kind of her whole spiel on what she does, because I think this model needs to be replicated. Now, tell us about the model, because I'm an analytical guy, Lean Six Sigma and all that kind of stuff. So I love data and structure and all that. So tell me how you guys' model is actually set up.
Sure. So I think I've mentioned this before, but we are a state agency, so that's different than a lot of other groups. So we are, most of our funding comes from the state, though we do have some federal grants. And then the model itself really kind of revolves around three hallmarks. The first one is that we're neutral. So I always liken this to the old adage that attorneys don't ever ask a question they don't know the answer to. But in our line of work, because we're set up as a neutral agency, we get to be curious. We get to ask questions even when we don't know what the answer is, and not really concern ourselves with what the answer is going to be, because the goal is to get to the truth. And the best way to seek the truth is to just be curious and ask those questions. The second hallmark of our process is the confidentiality. So all of our case files and investigations are confidential up until the point they're presented. That allows us a couple of things. First of all, it allows us to get people to talk to us, just people in the community, if they know that they're not going to be seen on the media or the news, that night, snitching on someone or something like that. It allows people to be a little bit more comfortable in providing information. It also allows us to have full and frank conversations with some of the stakeholders in the criminal justice system. So one of the examples that I give here is evidence rooms. One of my passions is property and evidence. If you look at my bio, you'll see that I'm involved in a lot of organizations at the state and international level related to property and evidence. And so we have an opportunity in our work to go into evidence rooms, to look for evidence. And sometimes that's make or break in these cases, right? And so when we do that, when we see what we call a hot mess, we're able to have real conversations with those agencies about kind of the things we're seeing and how they can do better. And we've even had agencies that have said, hey, will you write something up for us so I can give it to my chief or to my sheriff or to the leader here so that we can get the things we need to fix this. And so that's really important. And I think that we're able to do that because we're able to have those conversations, again, without that just all being out in the world. We're not trying to air anyone's dirty laundry. We're trying to help them. Right. And then the third hallmark is the commission's broad statutory authority. So this is really cool. And this is where I kind of geek out in a legal sense. We are given all of the authority of criminal and civil procedure to effectuate our investigations. And so what that means is if we need to talk to a witness who doesn't want to talk to us voluntarily, we can do a deposition under the civil rules of procedure. Mm-hmm. That's not something that most people in the criminal world have access to. We can get a search warrant. Just like law enforcement, we're able to do that. We can go seek someone's DNA if we need to get a standard from them. If the deposition route isn't working, we can flip back into the criminal world and try to get a material witness order under criminal procedure. So there's all these tools at our fingertips. And the reason that works and is unique is because that allows us to get to the truth. So unlike many other models that are trying to get to the truth and innocence, we're just given all of these tools to actually be able to get to the truth. And I think that that's very significant and has a deep impact on our ability to do the work.
Imagine that, an organization being given the tools they need to actually get the job done. That's impressive. I just want to double back for a moment because you talked about evidence. And as you know, Greg Smith, the executive producer and vice president of the CL King Group Incorporated, and the guy who organized having our great guest on the show tonight, he wrote a book, 100 ways to run and fix your evidence room. And so I think you guys met at a training that you were given, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so this is you being able to go into all of these areas without being handcuffed, if you will, and being able to get the information that you need. I know it gives the people that you're representing some they're secure in knowing that you're going to give it a full effort and expose everything that needs to be uncovered.
Yeah, these when the claimants come to the commission, and we're not in that attorney-client relationship, like an Innocence Project or a defense attorney would be. But when they come, they actually give up a ton of rights, and we didn't talk about this earlier, but in order to participate in the process, they have to waive their right against self-incrimination, their attorney-client privilege, all of those kinds of things that are normally protected under the Constitution.
Right.
They have to waive those rights to go through our process. So they really have some skin in the game to go all the way through the commission process. And so the flip side of that is then we have to do a really good job of making sure we're uncovering everything we can possibly uncover. Because if someone's going to give up that much, then there's really an obligation on our part to give just as much back.
Right. I wonder, and this, we didn't prep for this, but I wonder, just thinking of statistically, how many exonerations happen, on a state and national level annually. Do you have any information on that? How many folks get exonerated?
I don't have any data up to date on that. The commission has between 1 and 3 hearings a year. We actually have right now 8 individuals who are awaiting that 3-judge panel. So we've already had our hearing, and now they're awaiting their 3-judge panel hearing for a determination on whether or not they'll be exonerated. So we've got 8 kind of in the hopper there. Of course, COVID has played a part in some of those hearings getting continued until next year that were supposed to happen this year. But that depending on how those cases turn out, there are 8 individuals at least in North Carolina awaiting that final adjudication.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are hearing a very, very smart young lady articulate some things, and that is Attorney Lindsey Smith, the executive director of the Innocence Inquiry Commission here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I got to get back to Raleigh to go to the museums. I just love, you talk about geeking out. I just love geeking out in there. But my kids, they don't buy it, man. My kids are all older now. I want to walk and look at every single thing in the museum and read all the plaques and everything. And they're just like, they're in and out in like 15 minutes. Okay, Dad, what's next? So anyway, so one of the other things that we discussed is, some of the dynamic cases that you've had, and what, to the degree that you can, are there a couple that stand out to you and in terms of their dynamics or severity or just off the wallness? What can you give us some insights on some of the cases that you've had?
Yeah, so most of our cases are confidential. However, cases that do move forward to a commission hearing, there are certain documents and records that become public. And so obviously everything that we testify to becomes public. So I can talk about a couple of those. The first one that I'll tell you about is the Kenneth Cagagnera and Robert Wilcoxon case. It was out of Asheville, North Carolina, Buncombe County. It was really the first big case that I worked on when I came to the commission in 2010. I was co-lead investigator on that with one of my colleagues. And it was a roller coaster ride. There were so many things in that case that were up and down. But one thing that I remember, there was a vehicle that was in a surveillance video from a gas station. And the law enforcement at the time believed it belonged to the suspects, Mr. Cagagnera, Mr. Wilcoxon, and the other individuals they were with that night. And So we actually hired a vehicle expert, and we got this guy out of, I don't know, Missouri, somewhere in the Midwest, and just said, you know, here are the still images and the video of this car. We'd like you to tell us anything you can about the car, the make, model, the year. And this guy, I mean, I don't know if this was like a hobby to him, but he really was an expert. And so he comes back to us, he gives us the make, model, the year, a year range. And then we say, okay, can you tell us whether it could have been this other car and this other car? And we gave him a list of cars, and he's like, no. And he gave us the reasons why. We didn't tell him why we were asking. We didn't tell him what kind of car we were looking for. We just wanted his raw understanding of, or his raw analysis of what this car might be. Right. And so he came back and he told us, and it ended up matching the type of car and the year, make, model, all of that of a car that one of the alternate suspects was known to drive, which was really, really interesting. But the reason this story strikes me is because as we're testifying about it and as we're reading his report, all I can think of is My Cousin Vinny. You know, that scene where she's on the stand and they're like going through this. And I just thought, that's what's happening here. And I go back and I talk to my alma mater. I went to Elon University for undergrad, and I go back and I talk there every semester. And the further we get out, when I say My Cousin Vinny, they all just blank stare at me. So generational thing there, but yeah, that was a good one. Another really interesting story. We had a case out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I should go back, Mr. Caganeer and Mr. Wilcoxon were ultimately exonerated. This case out of Charlotte, North Carolina, Israel Grant, that case also resulted in exoneration. And this one was very different. One of the victims, there were two victims in the case, a female and a male. The female victim had come forward and said that the crime didn't happen, that she made it up, or that her boyfriend made it up, and that they had just told police it happened. Well, we went and talked to him, our staff did, and he stuck by his story that the crime happened, but there was enough information there that we felt like we needed to present it to the commissioners. And so we did, and I had about 2 pages of questions for him, and I put him on the stand. And again, we like to do open-ended questions. So I looked at him and I said, sir, tell us what happened during this crime. And he said, I can't, it didn't happen. And I remember looking down at my paper and being like, marking a big old X on it and just kind of throwing up my hands. And again, that's one of those Perry Mason Matlock moments, right? You never think something like that's going to happen, but it did. And of course, Mr. Grant was ultimately exonerated. It turned out that they made it up because they had like a $50 dispute over marijuana.
Oh, wow.
Nobody kind of ever figured that out until we got involved.
So you know what? Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is. I hope that you guys heard that description of the type of work that they do at the Innocence Inquiry Commission, with the executive director joining us tonight, attorney Lindsey Smith. And Lindsey, I just want to tell you that I'm thankful that wise professor talked to you early on and got you to see, because I understand that it's neutral, and we respect that neutrality, and that's important. But we also understand that you're putting everything into making sure that you can take the facts and get someone who says I'm innocent and prove that they are. So you got a staff of 9 folks, huh?
Yes, sir.
And that's a unique situation, because I imagine you guys are pretty close.
We are. We're a tight-knit staff. A good group. We've got several folks that have been with us for 3 or more years. Some people, I've been there for almost 11. We've got people that have been there 5 to 7 years. So we're a really tight group. And
this kind of brings up, this is not necessarily innocence related, but it is about the type of character that you have relative to your people. One of the things that Lindsey talked about in writing up for the show was how they do some intense work. Okay. And it's not just Barney Fife and Matlock, but it's really trying to help people who are incarcerated. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't understand. I mean, we're fussing about sometimes having to stay in the house to not get COVID. We're talking about people that are behind bars 24/7, and the intensity that is put on these folks' desks to say, hey, listen, I've got proof that I was not there or I didn't do this. And so she's got a staff of 9 folks, and it can be intense. So, from a staffing perspective, and from a, just from a leadership perspective, how have you helped your staff navigate even through this COVID-19 season? What's some things that you have done?
Sure. So yeah, the work is weighty, and it's weighty in a couple of ways, right? It's weighty because you might be investigating a case where someone is actually innocent, and you've got to figure that out, and you've got to find all those things. It's also weighty just because we're dealing mostly with violent felonies, and so the facts of these cases can be really taxing on one's mental health. It's not always fun to go into the office and read about a homicide or a sexual assault. We also have to consider the victims in this, the original victims of the crime. We
Right.
are re-traumatizing them as well. And so that is weighty. So a couple of things we've done during COVID, we were in the middle of a hearing kind of when COVID hit. So we finished that up, and then we very quickly pivoted to a pretty substantial work from home model for the first couple of months of COVID earlier this year. We've continued that. So we have people coming into the office as needed, or as they feel comfortable, but we've also continued to allow people to work from home so long as they're able to get their work done. What I've found with my staff is that they are able to do that. And I think because they're allowed to work from home and balance some of their other responsibilities in their personal life and flex their time and do those things, that they're actually just as productive, if not more productive, than when we're in the office from 9 to 5 every day. Another thing that we did during COVID that's been kind of unique, and really some lessons we've learned that maybe we'd like to take forward post-COVID. We're not able to go into prisons right now and do our interviews. We're having to do those via WebEx or Zoom or something like that. We worked with the Department of Public Safety to be able to be allowed to do that so that we could continue those interviews and continue that work and not just put stuff on hold this year, because that would have been the easy thing to do, to just be like, nope, we can't do that this year. What we've learned is those interviews are going really well. And there may be times where we need to go sit face to face with someone, but what we'd like to do is continue to cultivate that relationship with the Department of Public Safety and possibly continue to do this even post-COVID. Because like you said earlier, when you go into prison, you're kind of at the mercy of the prison. And if the guard's going to bring you out, and if something goes down, they're not going to bring you out first. They're not worried about you. So from a safety perspective, we're also able to provide that. One additional thing that we did, and this wasn't really COVID related, but last about a year and a half ago, we really started talking about the fact that we have some responsibilities under the statute to provide notice to victims when we get to a certain point in our investigations. And that has always fallen kind of on the executive director, but we really started talking about how we wanted to build a more robust program to handle victim contact, victim support, to take that a little bit off of my plate, because I am so involved in the investigations, and have someone who's truly a victim support person be there for the victims, as well as provide our staff training on how to be trauma informed when we go to interview victims or interact with them. So we actually sought a grant through the Governor's Crime Commission, and now have a person on staff. She started right before COVID, Emma, who's our victim resource coordinator, and she is fantastic. That has allowed, between the training we've received and then her coming on board, that's allowed us to actually provide some meaningful participation to victims of crime, and also learn to take care of ourselves a little bit. So that's a really important balance as well.
Wow. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is what I tell you, man. Every week I get to hear these types of stories. Lindsey Smith, attorney Lindsey Smith, executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry. Over the past since 2010, this commission has helped to exonerate 12 wrongly incarcerated individuals and give them their life back. Now, this is a question that I asked, and the landing gear is down, ladies and gentlemen. Please return your drink trays back to the table or whatever. Listen, when someone is wrongly incarcerated, and I think this is something that's an inquiry for people. I mean, do they get I get they get exonerated, but do they receive any type of remuneration?
Yeah, so in North Carolina, we have a statute that if someone goes all the way through the commission's process and is exonerated by a 3-judge panel at the end of the commission process, they are entitled to some compensation. It is $50,000 a year, but it caps out at $750,000. So if you do the math on that, that's 15 years. So when we're talking about some of these folks who've been incarcerated for 30 plus years, they would be eligible for that 750,000, but that is the cap. Another way that a lot of these individuals do seek some compensation is through civil suits. And our commission isn't involved in that process at all, but we do know that several individuals who've been exonerated through our process have successfully filed civil suits and then received settlements from the various actors in those civil suits.
Well, I think it's important. One other thing that we want to just drive home in this whole conversation, again, with Attorney Lindsey Smith, the executive director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. I think one other thing that we want to drive home is that if someone in North Carolina feels that they fit into this category or have someone that does, they need to reach out to you all. And it's Innocence Commission nc.gov, or you can find them on social media on Facebook in NC Innocence. And they can reach out to you. And if family members reach out to you, or even folks incarcerated, can they reach out to you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website has a contact us. Anybody can go there and contact us directly. You can also send us a message on Facebook. Individuals who have been convicted are allowed to apply directly to the commission or have their cases referred by an attorney or a state or local agency. So family and friends, absolutely reach out. You can't technically refer a case to the commission, but we are able to then follow up with your loved one and ask them if they want to apply. So basically they have to say, yes, I want to apply. I want you to look at the case. And then we can send them the paperwork for them to get connected.
Well, that's awesome. One of my team members, Danny, he's a close friend and helps us with the show. We talk about teleworking a lot and how time has changed in terms of the whole teleworking piece. And I know Danny probably appreciates hearing that a government entity is actually using telework and being still efficient. Imagine that, working efficient. And from what I heard about what you have going on, Lindsey, you run a pretty efficient office, huh? I think we might have gotten froze up. Did you miss that part?
I missed that question. Yes, everything was frozen.
Yeah, I apologize. In terms of efficiency, and I was telling one of our show gentlemen that help us on the show, Danny, we talk about telework a lot and how it can be. It's probably going to be a part of the new normal conversation, and so your team is working and being efficient and still helping to change lives. And I said that you run a pretty efficient team there, and you can brag on yourself. Go ahead. How do you feel your team runs efficiently there at the office?
I do. I don't like to brag on myself, and really I'm bragging on my team, but
Right.
we're an efficient state agency. I think when we talk to folks, they're actually surprised at how efficient our agency is. And efficiency is super important. It's one of the things, it was one of my goals when I became director, was to really get in there and get things moving smoothly and efficiently. And I think what we've learned with the teleworking is that you can still be very efficient. What I haven't seen is any drop off in our efficiency this year. And in some ways, I see more efficiency because again, when your employees are allowed to harmonize their
Right.
work and
Right.
their home life, they are just more efficient. That is, kind of part of it. And so we really pride ourselves on being a good working environment for people with families and with other obligations. And everybody is still getting the work done. And that's what's important.
Now listen to that. That was a great word there, Danny. She said harmonize your work and your home life, and I really do feel, because listen, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, I'm at the house, and I'm always at the house, and my kids when they're in school, because part of the time it is a very harmonious. It's been a harmonious 9 months. It's been a challenging 9 months, but it's also been very harmonious because some of the things that, like for example, if I'm working on a task, or if I'm on the clock, I am looking at the clock, and at whatever time the whistle's blowing, I'm out. But if I'm working on a tasker and I'm here at the ranch, I'm just going to continue finishing that tasker and actually get myself ahead. And so that's a really, really powerful message for even our HR minded people out there listening to Impacting Life 24/7. I'm sending you a message that it can be done and it won't derail the company. So Lindsey, you've done such a great job for us. And you got big plans for Christmas, or are you kind of staying at the ranch?
I don't know what we're doing yet. We had hoped to see some family, but we're also now considering just hanging out at home. Maybe for the first time in my child's life, letting Santa come to our house instead of to one of his grandparents' houses.
Right. Well, listen, and that's great. Let Santa come, because listen, I got a that lives with me, a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and they still expect the Santa to come out that chimney there. So I don't know what's up with all that.
That's right.
I think I expect him to come out too. So Lindsey, Greg has already said we want to have you back in 2021. But I also, I'm going to send you this, all of the show information, but we want to connect with you to have you come talk to our Leadership Institute. We can do it virtually. And I just love what your project and your commission is doing and how you're leading it. You're doing a tremendous job. Ladies and gentlemen, tuning in to Impacting Life. This is Attorney Lindsey Smith, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. She has helped to exonerate 12 wrongly convicted individuals over the past decade. And we really appreciate those lives are greatly impacted. When we talk about impact, that's impact, Lindsey.
Thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. I love to talk about the commission. So I'll absolutely come speak with your leadership group and anyone else who wants to hear from the commission. If you will just connect with us on social media or on the website, I'm happy to speak, talk to anyone who might be interested in starting a commission or having someone talk about the model, or, college classes, law school classes. I'm always willing to come and talk, even if we do it electronically these days.
Yeah, my daughter, my 19-year-old, she served in teen court as a prosecutor. So she loves that whole arena. So I know she would definitely tune in to hear it. She'll probably tune into this show, the one show that she'll listen to for her dad talking about law. But she would definitely love to hear more about what you're doing and that commission. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this model is something that Lindsey has worked here in North Carolina, and it's the only one in the nation. And we believe that it could be replicated throughout the country. So Lindsey Smith, the Executive Director and Attorney, Lindsey Smith, of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission, we thank you. We definitely will stay connected with you, and we appreciate you giving us all of your time tonight, okay? Thank you for giving life back to those 12 individuals as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Lindsey, thank you so much. We'll be in touch, okay?
All righty.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here live on Impact Life 24/7, and that is the end of my work week. Greg works me like an absolute dog. He just does never give me a day off, and I need a day off. And so Friday, my Thursday is actually y'all Friday. That's it for me, y'all. And so I told Lindsey, which was so cool, Lindsey Smith, the Executive Director of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission, that every other night I have someone new in my studio. Every other night I have someone new in my house. And hearing the story of someone that could have went and did her own thing in terms of being a prosecutor, and she's a barred attorney and such, but she saw that there was a need. She saw that there was a need in North Carolina. And there was a commission of folks, an independent commission that says, you know what, there are people that are wrongfully incarcerated. And one thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about is Lindsey said this in her write-up for the show, because people write to us and give us information about why they want to come on. She said, we're human beings are involved in this process, and human beings can make a mistake. And it's their job to uncover those when things go wrong. And when people are wrongly accused, man, like when I have that guy on the show, I'm gonna be talking to a man that, well, you know, imagine this: you went in jail, and then when you got out 40 years later, it's like being thrown into a brand new country because everything's different. You know, in prison, they still using pay phones with quarters, or no, you can't use quarters, just making collect calls. And now this brother comes out and everybody got a phone and they walk around with him. And when he went into prison, you had to stop on the road and find one of them booths. Remember them phone booths, y'all? And you get a phone book and find somebody's number and put change in a box and talk to somebody. Now you ain't got to stop. You used to have a map. When he went into prison, you had to have a map to figure out where you was going from point A to point B. Now it's all on your phone. So that is a tremendous commission. And we appreciate Lindsey and her work and her labor of love for those that are wrongly incarcerated. I'm thankful that somebody like her is leading that team there at the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission there in Raleigh, North Carolina. So thank you, Lindsey. Thank you to your team. Thank you to all the work that you guys continue to do. And I know that those 12 human beings, because that's what they are, they're human beings, regardless of whether they're guilty or not. They're human beings. Those 12 lives that you impacted, they will never, ever forget the work of the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me. This is the end of my work week. Impacting Life 24/7. We love for you to subscribe, share, let somebody know that we have people like Lindsey Smith on our show that is leading change in America. And I'm going to get ready to put the landing gear down. I think we got a couple more shows left. I'll be on some shows, and we're very, very thankful for the doors that are continuing to open up here at Impacting Life 24/7. I think I got a couple shows I was asked to be on in December, and so I'm looking forward to that. It's a different dynamic when you are a guest as opposed to a host, because the host got to do everything. I mean, you got to be the DJ, the lighting cat, the makeup. When you go to somebody else's show, you just get to go there and tell your vision and your burden. That's a beautiful thing. So I'm looking forward to being on a couple shows, and we're going to close out the year strong on Impacting Life 24/7. Subscribe. All you got to do is go to CL King Speaker, click on the podcast link, and subscribe. We found out, Danny, you'll find this interesting. Since we switched to Podbean, we have crossed the threshold of over 500 downloads in the Podbean world, because we switched from another platform, another hosting platform. So we're on episode, I think, 108 or 9, and we're just continuing to grind, and we're very, very thankful for all of your support. Subscribe at impactinglife247.podbean.com or at clkingspeaker.com. God bless you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. And we'll see you back here Monday on Impacting Life 24/7 with your host, CL King.